So let me get this straight. A moderate Republican from President Obama's home state of Illinois and a conservative Democrat from President Obama's political party are combining their forces to push for a delay in the individual mandate after the government shutdown and all the rigmarole over Obamacare. What the heck is going on in Washington? Let's talk about that next on the Monday edition of Get Right with Lenny McAllister. Starting right
now. Get Right with Lenny McAllister.
The way we help bring back America and we build the bridges and bring people together is by making sure we hold everybody accountable in a 360 fashion.
So let me close with this. Yes, there is a change that we can believe in, but it will never come from a politician or a government program.
We cannot find physical standards here in the land of Lincoln, from Carbondale to Elgin, that we can collectively continue to tolerate the insanity found on the streets of South Chicago and East St. Louis.
We got to move away from the American Idol soundbite nature of politics and back to the American statesman of humble servant leadership that we used to see in politics.
It is time to roll out the era of the new, educated, engaged, and energized American citizens.
I go do the jail ministry. I speak to the kids in the streets. So I'm never going to lay down being conservative just as much as I'll never lay down being a proud African American.
I feel like a black republic. Money I got coming in. Can't turn my back on the hood. I got love for them. Can't clean my act.
Happy Monday, people. Welcome to another edition, a fun, jam-packed version of information and debate and all the rigmarole that we have here on Get Right with Lenny McAllister. You know the drill. On Twitter, you can hit me up with your comments. You can retweet me. It's LennyMcAllister. On Facebook, very simple, tiny.url.com/ what did I say? Did I say tiny.url? Wrong. tinyurl.com/LennyPage. That is where you find me. I don't know if I said it or not, but that's all right. I think I said it wrong the first time. I know I said it right the second time. Either way, you can leave your comments on Facebook and on Twitter. You know I love interacting with you. I appreciate those that retweet the show, retweet the links. Put your comments in there. We go back and forth, and you know what? It's good. That's what this is supposed to be all about. It's supposed to be about compromise and making sense and pushing for solutions and getting the nation to a point of time where we're having healthy dialogue to make our struggling, hurting nation healed, stronger, better, more hopeful, more prosperous, all those things. Unlike what we've been seeing in politics on Capitol Hill. And now, and maybe we're starting to see it, but again, this isn't going to go out. This isn't going to play out well. This is not going to play out well with what I mentioned in regards to the moderate Republican from Illinois, which is Senator Mark Kirk, and the conservative Democrat from West Virginia, which is Joe Manchin, coming together and drafting legislation that is promoting a delay in the individual mandate for Obamacare for a year. Now, why do I say this is not going to work out well? Again, give me your feedback on Twitter or on Facebook. The reason why I'm saying this, it's very simple. If there was going to be a sensible delay in the individual mandate, it should have been prompted and driven by the White House. It should have kept the flaws of the website away from the American public. It should have driven the negotiations. And President Obama, with a busted computer system and a broken bureaucracy, should have been able to come out of this smelling like a rose because he was the one driving the bus. Even if you get the individual mandate now, and this is if you're a Democrat, and again, I'm not a Democrat, so I'm giving a little bit of free advice or doing a little bit of hindsight 2020 type of analysis. If you are going to do this anyway, whether it's by vote from the House of Representatives and the Senate, or the White House does some type of negotiation because of this bipartisan, and that's the key, bipartisan legislation. This is the first time that there's ever been anything bipartisan on Obamacare, and it just so happens to be delaying Obamacare for a year. That is symbolic and highly important to take into consideration. That the first piece of bipartisan legislation proposed on Obamacare is basically telling the White House, waved the white flag. I mean, if you're a Democrat, you fought the good fight. It just didn't work out. And if you're an American that's looking at this without being a Democrat, and even, you could be a Democrat, apparently, according to Manchin, and admit this. So unless if you're a hardcore Democrat, you're looking at this and saying to yourself, hey, Mr. President, we tried to do this the best we know how. We tried to power through the mistakes. We tried to hide this from the American people. We even rode the bad brand name that the Republican Party has in order to provide ourselves the opportunity to roll this out. And it just didn't work. Give it up for now. Delay it for a year. Take your risks that by the time you roll this back out before the 2014 midterm elections, that it will be streamlined in such a fashion where you can claim success, claim some bipartisanship, and ease off the losses that may come for Democrats in November 2014. Anytime you see that, and that's the argument that they're making now, whether it's actually in the legislation or not, of course it's not going to be sitting there in the legislation saying, President Obama, you screwed up. It might, well, no, it's not. It might be one of the sections, but it probably isn't. Ted Cruz isn't writing this. Mark Kirk did. With that said, you have to still look at this from the White House perspective and understand that this is saying that it's over. The first bipartisan piece of legislation is basically asking to delay the individual mandate. It's basically asking the Obama administration to continue the self-repeal of Obamacare, delay the employer mandate, provide all the exceptions. Now you are going one step further and saying, Obama administration, continue the self-repeal of Obamacare by delaying the individual mandate, not because it's only right and it's only fair, because that would have been the argument in September if President Obama was driving the argument. Now it is, it's only right, it's only fair, and it doesn't work in its current form. And we need to evaluate this over the course of the 12 months. By the way, when people are campaigning both on this legislation and against this legislation, and of course there's a third party, which is probably bigger than the campaigning for this legislation. If you're a Democrat, you're probably trying to avoid even bringing it up. If you voted for this in the Senate, and heck, heaven forbid you voted for this as part of the deal making that came in 2010, you have serious issues because you allowed yourself to buy into the back and forth with Pelosi and Reid, knowing that this was going to be a nightmare, a headache. You probably got indications from some place that this was not going to work out well in October 2013 on the heels of a potential government shutdown, on the heels of us bumping up against the debt ceiling, and you still allowed the Obama administration, without pressure from the Democrats, to allow this to roll out and be as flawed as it was. If you're a Democrat and you see this bipartisan legislation coming out, there's two things going through your mind. Number one, you can agree or disagree with me on this. I'm pretty certain that there are Democrats in both the House of Representatives and in the Senate that are saying, thank God somebody had the courage to say, we're going to do this. And I'm thankful that it's somebody that's not running for re-election in 2014. Somebody in our party had to, in essence, take this arrow for the team because the president's going to drive us all off a cliff and he's not running for re-election anymore. So they're probably happy about that. The other thing that I think Democrats are thinking is that now that we've done this, how do we vote against this where we do not back completely away from the president, but we are far enough away so that as stuff continues to get slung at this president, it doesn't get on our shoes, or let alone our pants and our shirt. That is what these Democrats are facing now, because whether you're running for re-election, 435 people overall, both Republicans and Democrats, and a couple of libertarians, or you're in the Senate doing it, and I say libertarians, I don't know if there's actual any independents in the House. They're in the Senate, but not necessarily the House. Anyway, with that said, you have to ride this line because this president is not as popular, A, as he used to be, 2, as much as he should be. And now the legislation is obviously not popular. You saw poll numbers throughout the last several years saying that this was not popular in its current form, in its totality over the last several years. And now you're seeing why people thought that way. People are begrudgingly agreeing with the Republicans on Obamacare, and you know, based on the Republican brand name, and the approval ratings of Republicans in Congress that people don't want to do that. They do not want to agree with the Republican Party, yet they have to because this rollout has been that bad. And the language behind this, the messaging behind this, the spin about this has been bad. And then you're finding out that the Obama administration knew that the system wasn't ready, knew that people would have to lose their health care plan or their doctors, and they rolled it out anyway on a bunch of false promises, which, by the way, for a politician that ran for election in 2008 talking about hope and change, and we're going to change the way we do things in Washington, and we have to elevate the American people's trust in the political system once again, for him to act like a typical, dare I say it, Chicago politician over the last several years, including through the 2012 election season, that is detrimental for any Democrat that has to deal with the electorate in 2014. So yes, I think that they're happy that Mark Kirk, in essence, was able to get, and it's important for Mark Kirk because he's coming from Illinois. He's a martyr from Illinois. But to be able to then go to Manchin and get Manchin to do this, which, by the way, Democrats aren't particularly happy with Manchin, but they probably can't do anything with him anyway. I mean, that's the interesting thing. He's a popular former governor. He's seen as being sensible. He's seen as being down to earth. He has enough connections to things such as Second Amendment folks and NRA in a place like West Virginia that you're not going to really push him out. Yet at the same time, he can walk to the other side of the aisle and agree with somebody like a Mark Kirk. There are Democrats that are thankful. I said Mark Kirk earlier, but I meant Manchin. They are thankful that Manchin took the arrow for the Democrats because somebody had to tell this president this isn't working. And I still go to you with this. I still think that President Obama let three people drive the bus too much, too often, too early in his presidential tenure. I think it was Emanuel, Reid, Pelosi. I think that if President Obama, and this is part of his flaw, and again, feedback, agree, disagree on Twitter, on Facebook, you know where to find me. I think this president, and you're finding this out with Obamacare, you're finding this out with the opposition to Obamacare, and now people are even turning on him on Capitol Hill. If he were a better politician, if there were better bonds out there, if there was a better tone out there between the White House and Capitol Hill, he would have been able to avoid this. This embarrassment would have been avoided, whether you push for the individual mandate delay, but the Obama administration drives all the terms, or the blow is softened some kind of way, where it's an incremental rollout. It's a managed expectation or managed set of expectations that come out when it comes to how Obamacare was going to look October 1st, 2013. Something would have been different, or he would have had more advocates and, more importantly, more surrogates that were elected officials that voted for this legislation to come out and support this rollout despite the flaws. And if you pay attention and you see what's transpiring, nobody's catching this president's back. It's as if he has literally run over everybody's puppy dog on the way to work so far this month, or actually last couple months now. Nobody wants to catch President Obama's back in the Democratic Party for the most part. Poor Kathleen Sebelius is sitting up there, and the testimony she's had to have given recently has just been, she's been out there by herself. You have the lawyer-in-chief trying to change his words, although it's almost as if they have forgotten that people actually record everything he says. When you're president, they record everything you say. So there is no way to sit there and try to add words into his phrase of, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. If you like your health plan, you can keep your health plan. There's no way to add any type of phrase or an asterisk. There's like an implied asterisk in there. Like you need the little person that reads, you know, they read the disclaimer very, very quickly at the end of a car ad. 60% 600% credit, gotta have a 7% credit score. I can't even do it that fast. And I talk fast. You need like a New Yorker hopped up on Red Bull, some Starbucks, and 5-hour energy drink to do it effectively. But that's kind of like what he's expecting or hoping is out there. People understand that this isn't misspeaking. This is a mistruth. And you know what a mistruth is to common everyday folks like you and me. It's just a lie. Now, I don't want to call him a liar because you can tell a lie and not be a liar per se. A liar is somebody that does it as a trend or something along those lines. Now, of course, there are some of you out there, some of you on my side of the aisle that would say he lies all the time. I don't think he lies all the time. I think he has stretched the truth quite often. I think that he likes avoiding some of the responsibility for some of the things that are going on. I think that he wants to push aside responsibility for the economy. He loves being able to blame Republicans. So I think he is more of a responsibility shifter than he is a liar. But I will grant you your point of view, if you will. With this in mind, though, and I have to say this, with this in mind, now that he's been caught, for example, the red line last year with Syria. Speaking of red lines, I'm sure we'll get to that this week. You know, John Kerry talking about red lines with Iran. Please don't do that. Please put the red Sharpie back away in the drawer, in your briefcase, wherever you've had it. Don't talk about red lines. Anywho, between red lines with Syria, between the economy, between Obamacare, there's enough for this president to have a credibility issue. And this bipartisan legislation further impacts that. And I think that, if anything, it's going to... Here's the thing. It's very strategic for some Democrats. If you're a conservative Democrat, this may help you next year. For the Democratic Party overall, this hurts them because this is the one time a Democrat reached across the aisle to do anything with Obamacare. And it's to delay it. It's to the very thing that the government got shut down over. You are basically admitting surrender from a well-respected Democrat. This is not a floozy in the House that's a backbencher. And that's the thing. This is not some floozy, and I don't mean floozy man or woman. I'm just putting a term out there. I'm talking about somebody that no one really respects, no one really likes. It's kind of seen as being eccentric. Don't assign gender to it. Don't assign race to it. It's just a term. Putting that out there. Some floozy, some knucklehead, some goofball that's a backbencher, that's a radical, that's doing it with, let's say, Michelle Bachmann, or where there's some goofball Democrat and Michelle Bachmann introducing legislation to delay the individual mandate for a year. If that were the case coming out of the House of Representatives, maybe, then it's like, who cares? Yeah, it's bipartisan, but look who it is. It's some blockhead that's a backbencher from, name a state that nobody's heard of, in an extremely gerrymandered district where they would have to cartwheel naked down Main Street twice, not once, twice in order to lose. And Michelle Bachmann, who's retiring anyway, and we all know she's Tea Party. So, that's not the case. Mark Kirk, who won President Obama's former Senate seat in Illinois in the midterm elections, when President Obama was actively pushing to make sure Alexei Janulius won that seat in November 2010, and a respected former governor out of West Virginia, a state that is both blue, but also believes in gun rights, believes in the Second Amendment, strong NRA, strong hunting community, rural community, poor state. Not your typical highfalutin state like Massachusetts that's blue. Highfalutin state like Connecticut. Highfalutin wannabe still broke like California. It's actually, grassroots and salt of the earth type people. That's what makes this very, very difficult for this White House. And yeah, I think at some point in time, and as I'm wrapping up, again, want your feedback, you got to ask yourself the question, what's going on Capitol Hill? I think that the Democratic Party is already turning the lights down on President Obama. If this is the beginning of the indication as to how this president's going to be treated over the next 2.5 to 3 years, as we're going into 2014, actually we'll have 4 more years after this? 4, 5, 6, 7? Yeah, we got 4 more years after this. All of 14, 15, 16, all of 14, 15, 16, 17. No, more than that, actually. See, I'm getting myself confused. All of 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Basically 5 more years, in essence, as far as according to the calendar anyway. When you look at this and you see how the Democratic Party is reacting to President Obama in this instance, how people are backing away from him, and you could sit there and say that's a political spin, he's a lame duck president, that's what they should do. No, he's still a history-making president. And when you back away from a history-making president while he's trying his darndest to push the historic legislation that got passed underneath his tenure, that becomes a problem. That becomes because now what they're doing is they're throwing shade on this president. They're taking the spotlight away from this president. And if that's the case, with him breaking the glass ceiling the way he did as an African-American man to go from an unknown to the first African-American president, how sad is that? How symbolic of the squandering of political capital is that? How symbolic of the schizophrenic and dog-eat-dog world of politics is that? And what is that going to mean for the Democrats? I'm telling you, I don't think the Democrats are as primed to win as many elections in 2014 as they currently think that they are. And this bipartisan proposal is once again indicative of that. It's a white flag. What do you think? You know where to find me on Twitter, LennyMcAllister. You know where to find me on Facebook. Again, tinyurl.com/Lenny Page. In the meanwhile, we'll talk to you on Tuesday. Got some other wonderful things to announce for you, so we'll talk about that. It's AURN week. It's Global Grind week. And got something for you here, those that are in the Pittsburgh metropolitan area. We will talk about that. In the meanwhile, I'll talk to you soon. You have a fantastic day. Have a great, great one. TCNGB. Take care and God bless.